Hi everyone, my name is Lena Thompson and today I'm joined by Rianna, who I met on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. And we actually had a really interesting chat, well, a couple of weeks ago when we met about the nutrition and the misconception about the training and eating in women. And it's a topic that is really close to my heart because for so many years, as long as actually I remember myself, I've had this issue with my body weight, with obsession with exercising and eating, constantly depriving myself of calories, beating myself up. So Rianna actually shed a lot of light. It was just really, really interesting talking to her. And that's why I asked her whether I can interview her so she can share her message with everybody else. So hi, Rianna. It's really great to have you here. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Me too. I've got so many questions for you. So, but before we get started, I just wanted you to share, because you've got quite an interesting personal journey. How did you get here from where you were before?
Okay, so in terms of, I'm going to stick to the journey that's away from sort of my job and everything. In terms of getting to where I am with the focus on women specifically, it's really been a many years process, I would say. My father suffers with multiple sclerosis, and I found that out when I was at university, maybe 8 years ago or something. And from there, it sort of kick-started an interest in how nutrition and health and exercise can have an effect on the body. So it kick-started my interest in health, but from a very holistic angle, I would say. And since then, I've really experimented with different types of training, eating. I've done all the various diets that you could possibly do. And then I had a career change in 2019. I left my corporate job in London in 2018, came back, started again. I'm a qualified personal trainer, but because of lockdown and everything, I've kind of switched my focus. I work in corporate wellness anyway. And I focus primarily on unconventional strength training. I do like a lot of barefoot workouts, kettlebell stuff, all that kind of stuff. But more recently, I've just really honed in on training for women, because there was a point where I was training quite intensively, and I would notice that even though I take the same supplements, get the same amount of rest, I focus on my sleep for a lot of personal reasons. And I have quite a complicated medical history, so sleep is very important for me. So I track it religiously, and sleep is the number one priority, and I'm a proper sleep geek. But I noticed there was a week every month where I just felt really, really tired. And I would be like, what is happening here? Like I'm training the same, I'm eating the same, I'm supplementing the same, I'm getting the same amount of rest. Why am I always tired in this 1 week? And that really got me thinking about the menstrual cycle and how training the same, eating the same every week for women. And when I say women, I mean people with wombs who menstruate in their reproductive years, right? So anyone who's pre-menstruation or post-menopausal, I'm sort of eliminating from this conversation. And I don't really want to just say women, because obviously there are people who have wombs who don't identify as women, who may also menstruate and be in their reproductive years. So that's sort of the catch-all term. And I just really got into sort of how, eating the same, training the same every day, it can be very damaging to your body, your hormone imbalance, and your mindset, right? Because we've all been in a situation where we think, oh, I'm a woman and I just feel really tired, and why can't I do everything? And we live in a world of social media where you wake up in the morning, you feel really fucking tired, and then you look at your social media feed and everyone's up doing a workout, living their best life, and you're like, oh, why can't I keep up? And actually, I think the real aim is to remove that feeling of guilt that so many women identify with, about like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I go 100 million miles an hour? And redefine the word productivity when it comes to women's health.
Yeah, and it's completely, you're right. You beat yourself up because you look at Instagram especially, and everybody's so glammed up and they're so made up, and I'm like, how do you guys do this? How do you have time to like juggle the kids and whatever work you're doing and attend to this and yet look so beautiful? And that's why I hate doing lives, because that requires me to style my hair, to put on makeup, and I'm like,
yes, I really made the effort.
Well, yeah, and you look great, all natural, amazing. So I know also when we spoke last time, I shared with you that for years I used to run obsessively. I mean, I did marathons, ultra marathons. I experimented with my diet. I was permanently injured, but that was the only way I thought for me to maintain my body weight and, or even, you know, a little bit below, because as I said, I had this obsession. I still do to an extent, it's not that bad. And we spoke a little bit about the kind of training, like a cycle trainings. I think you
cyclical
can
training.
elaborate on that more.
Yeah, so cyclical training is really, for me personally, training is the thing that I have the most control over, right? So we'll get to this bit in the end, but like training is the first thing that I tackled because it was the thing that I relate to most. So I tackled training before I tackled nutrition, for example. But I'm gonna go about this on like a daily rhythm basis. So you have the circadian rhythm is like the 24-hour biological clock that we're all sort of intrinsically woven around, and it's set by the sun. Okay, the 28 to 32 day cycle is called the infradian rhythm, and this is the monthly cycle that we talk about. It doesn't have to, but when people refer to it as a month, it can be 25 days, it can be 35 days, like it's a bit arbitrary, but it's around a month. The circadian rhythm, I liken it to both because it is very easy to compare. Like for me, it's very easy to explain to my partner how I feel across my month in terms of how he feels across the day. So circadian rhythm wise, you wake up in the morning, you feel a bit like a bit groggy, but by the time sort of 10, 11 o'clock rolls around, you're like, whoa, okay, I've got more energy, let's go, I feel pretty good. And then sort of early afternoon, you maybe have a bit of a food coma situation going on, you hit that afternoon slump, potentially reach for a cup of coffee at like 4 p.m. to like spike you back up again. And then by the time evening rolls around, you are possibly quite introspective, wanting to chill out, and by the time your head hits the pillow, you're done, right? You're exhausted.
Yeah, there's also a glass of wine in between.
Glass of wine in between, maybe, yeah. So if you extrapolate that, that's pretty much how your monthly cycle rolls around, and it coincides and mirrors your temperature fluctuation across the day, mirrors your temperature fluctuation across the month. Your energy levels mirror the same thing. Your inclination to like social interaction, you don't really want to interact with people while you're like asleep. And for the same reason, you don't get up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning and do a HIIT workout, because it would be incredibly ineffective. You would feel basically hungover the next morning, very sleep deprived and unable to recover. Is the same reason we don't advocate that you do heavy, intense training during your period, because your body is primed for rest and recovery in that time. So I use the daily patterns, because everyone can identify with those, to explain how you should be training sort of across the month in line with those rhythms. So there are 4 phases to your cycle, and cyclical training basically addresses your energy, your needs, your hormones, your preference for social interaction across the month and how they ebb and flow across the month, and then prescribes certain training options to fit those phases. So in the first half of the month, your metabolism is quite low, or it's lower, so you can afford to ramp up the high intensity. Your cortisol level is also low, so when you exercise, and high intensity exercise ramps up your cortisol levels, which is also known as a stress hormone. So you can afford to stress your body out a little bit and push your endurance and go for those runs and do a lot of high energy workouts. In the second half of your cycle, your metabolism ramps up and your energy kind of dips off and your temperature drops slightly. So you need to eat more. If you don't eat more and you're on like a restrictive diet, you'll end up switching on fat storage, which no woman wants to hear. And then you're more inclined to do sort of heavy lifting, slower paced workouts. So think, resistance training, Pilates. And this is why resistance training is prescribed for women, because the second half of your cycle is typically the longest. I know I say half, but it's like the longest time in your cycle. So strength training is key. And then during your period, yoga and walking is all I would recommend, because your body is just not primed for it. And whatever you don't do in a phase, whatever needs you don't tend to, will have a knock-on impact on the next one. So when we talk about cyclical training, it's really honouring the different needs for your body across the month and doing what's best for you. And I think lots of women freak out and go, what do you mean I take a week off training? Oh my God, I don't want to do that. It's really going to impact my...
I can't, even now, I still can't do it. Like this morning, I thought, I really just want to yoga. I don't want to do anything else. Next minute, I know I was on a spinning bike, like sweating. I was like, how did I end up here again?
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's a very challenging concept because the fitness industry has a definition of productivity, which is more is better. But I'll come back to the analogy I use, like when you're sick, you don't think you should go out on a spin bike. The most productive thing you can do when you're sick is go to bed. And it's still productive. But I think there are a lot of like male patterns dominating the fitness industry. I talk about a lot on social media, being like, we can do the same. It's 2021. We can do the same. Everyone's capable of doing the same thing now, women, men, whatever. It doesn't mean that we should do it in the same way.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think the cyclical training is really teaching women how to train smarter, not harder.
And would you ever recommend, like, let's say, to do cardio and a weight lifting in the same day, or would you break them up according to cycles?
It sort of depends on your background of training. Like for a beginner, I probably wouldn't recommend a combination of both, but it really depends. So personally for my clients, anyone who's on a cyclical training plan, which is basically all of my female clients, they have a movement menu. So because part of this is learning about tuning into your body and speaking to your intuition as a woman, if you're feeling quite energetic in general across that week, but you don't really want to go for a run today, that's fine. You can go for a cycle, you can do some skipping, maybe you can even take it back a step and do like a stronger yoga class. As long as you don't swap it out for something that's in your menstrual phase, the menus are tailored to each phase of your cycle. So whatever movement you opt to do, depending on how you're feeling, it gives women the opportunity to take a step back and analyze, really assess how they feel and go, am I in the headspace to run today? Am I a bit knackered from the gym? Do I need to take it slow, maybe do a vinyasa flow and then hit it hard tomorrow? Because it totally depends. And I think, we're very much in this mindset of 5 days training, 2 days off, must have a rest day, must do this. And it's actually like, if you're a woman, you should be able to move and train pretty much on a daily basis, because your rest period comes when you're on your period.
You see, then it's just the thing is then arises like, how do I know that that's what my body needs and I'm just not being lazy? You see, and that's I never already know.
It's a fine balance. The best thing that I would always recommend is just journaling. Like lots of women track their cycles, but on a deeper dive into sort of what are you doing when you're tracking your cycle, it's very much they log when they get the period and that's it. When I say cycle tracking and journaling, I mean every single day, writing down how you're feeling, what your energy is like. Do you feel like really sluggish? Do you feel very focused? Do you feel like you want to be with friends? Do you feel like you want to be quite solitary? And it depends. If you have a history of training very intensely, you really have to take a step back and think about how you're feeling. Are you pushing through because you think you should be pushing through? Do you have a sense of guilt right now if you don't do a workout?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? What is actually going to make you feel good? If there was no social judgment, what would you be doing right now? If there was no pressure to show up on Instagram and your stories doing like a hardcore workout, what would you do? Would you sit on the sofa? And I think people are worried about coming across as lazy, but there is a balance, and there is like you do know the difference. I think if you think you're feeling lazy and you're worried about it and there's guilt attached to it, you're probably not being lazy. You know what I mean? There's a difference between I really just can't and yeah, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. That's what's always been my fear. Like if I miss one day, and it's been like over 20 years, since I've started obsessively exercising, but now it's changing, so some days I'll just do yoga. So I probably don't have many days off, maybe like twice a month, but I do go slow and easier, where I just do yoga. Even though last night I did yoga, I was all over the place. I was sweating. It was hard, and it wasn't even a Bikram yoga. I was like, whew, so much for my relaxing day. It was full on, but yeah, it was good.
I think if I was talking to you personally, I would say the thing that, because you're so worried about being lazy, you are never going to be lazy. You know what I mean? Like, you have such a fear of being lazy and not doing it, you won't ever be in that situation where you are just being lazy, because it's sort of ingrained in your psyche. It's how you think about yourself. And I think, you know, the first time I read and learned a lot about this stuff, it's very overwhelming. You're like, oh my God, I have to change my whole lifestyle. And I would say change one thing. Like, it's a slow process. If you can take it off a couple of days a week and then slowly change it over a month, this is not some sort of like, right, this month I did this and next month I'm going to be perfectly in tune with my cycle. That's not how this works. It takes time to calibrate and figure out your own rhythms. And I still learn new things about myself every month. I learn the more I pull back in my menstrual phase, on my period, the more energy I have coming out the starting gate when I'm like in my early phase, like my follicular phase, my ovulatory phase. I am like a Duracell bunny. I'm just like, I have so much energy, but I also know that I'm a bit scatty and I feel quite creative. So I know that when I drop off that and come into my luteal phase, like the third phase, between ovulation and your period, that's my time to focus, knuckle down and get stuff done.
Okay.
So you learn as you go, right? It's not like a quick fix.
Yeah, definitely. So if somebody was just starting out, you know, what would you recommend as a first step? Like to journal, or what can they do?
I think journaling is the best way. It's one of those things where you can be very honest with yourself about how you feel, right? No one's going to read your journal. You're not posting it on social media for anyone to see. You don't have to pretend to be anything. You can just journal, even if it's just one word. If you have a 32-day block in your calendar, right? You have like a square for every day. If you just write down one word that describes how you feel in that day, you will notice a pattern. I think a lot of women think, oh, I don't know, I'm quite erratic. And actually it's surprising when you start journaling and tracking this stuff on a daily basis, how routine it is that you feel crappy on this day. Oh, it's the same as last month and the month before. Interesting. Because there are often days where you transition between two phases. And those days you can feel a bit out of sorts because you're coming from like a very high energy phase into a slightly calmer one. And the transition day for me is always a bit like, it's a bit weird. So writing, I cannot stress enough, writing down and tuning into sort of how energetic you are and how inclined you are to want to be around people is very important. Like when I'm around let's take ovulation as an example. You talk about it in a very biological way. Around ovulation, you are going to look your best, feel your best, and want to interact with people. Why? Because you are biologically wired to attract a mate at that time. Like, evolution doesn't care about your life goals. It wants you to find a mate and reproduce. So you are going to be feeling very confident and very like want to interact with people. If you don't honor that and meet up with people and socialize, you're going to feel a bit sort of lost. So even though it's like a very high energy phase, it doesn't mean you're going to feel great all the time, because you have to tend to your needs in every single phase. So journaling is the best way to figure out how you feel across the month on a daily basis. And that's what I would recommend starting with.
Okay, great. So if somebody wanted to find out more, you know, how you can help them, where can they find you?
So we have just started a new account over on Instagram called The Female Method. That is where we'll be sharing lots of educational posts around training, food, personal experiences, all of that stuff. So it's just at The Female Method, all lowercase, on Facebook and Instagram. And then my account on here is Rianna Kate on LinkedIn. And we have a website in process, but it's not done yet. But in the meantime, you can find out more information at riannakate.co.uk. That's my website, and that's where I share a lot of my information around this kind of thing. So yeah, The Female Method is growing, and it's nice. I want to create I just want to basically create a community of women who can share their experiences, have a safe space, and feel like they can actually learn something that they weren't told when they were a teenager.
Yeah, it's a great community. I think so many people could definitely benefit from it.
Yeah,
I'll find you. I don't think I'm following you. Oh no, I am following you on Instagram. Yes, I am following you on Instagram. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, I think there's so much misinformation around this topic, and I think lots of women go through this stage of their life thinking, oh, I have this problem and I suffer with this problem. And you know, we did a post the other day about busting period myths. You know, like cramps are normal, the going on the pill will regulate my bleed, all this stuff. And people were really responsive to it because it resonates with a lot of people. A lot of people go through this stuff and they don't talking about it is very sort of taboo, and like no one wants to talk about it, and it's very like new generation. And you know, we should be talking about it, because once you start opening up about it, everyone has the same experience.
Yeah.
You know, like
unless you think it's just you, right?
Yeah, you think it's just you, and it's actually
no,
everyone has the same experience. Like if I am moaning about my other half to my girlfriends, they're like, oh my god, yes, so and so does the same thing. So we talk about that kind of thing, and we find level ground, but we don't talk about like what's going on inside.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because I think a shared experience is like, if it's a difficult experience, it's kind of, you half the difficulty of it. You know, a problem shared is a problem halved, or problem solved, or whatever. That's what we're really trying to promote with this.
Okay, that's great. So thank you, Rianna. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I learned something new every time we speak.
Thank you very much for having me.
And yeah, I'll just get the links for your social media, and I'll share them in the comments below the video. So for anybody watching this and you want to get in touch with Rianna, all the links to her Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, they will be just in the comments below. So thank you once again, and thank you all for listening, watching, and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, guys.